Township. I'd like to read a little opening statement for everybody, which we sort of start with every week. The Historic and Architectural Review Board, or Harb, was created to protect and enhance the North Wayne, South Wayne, and Luella Court historic districts for the educational, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public through preservation, protection, and regulation of buildings of historic interest or importance within these districts, and to safeguard elements of architectural history throughout the district which have been determined to be of historic significance. Under provisions of the Historic District Ordinance, the Harb serves to review applications for the construction, addition, or demolition of any principal building or any additions or accessory buildings. Each of Radnor's local historic districts has its distinct overall character, and each review will be taken in this context. All applications will also be reviewed as to their compliance with the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation. These overall standards are general in nature, widely used, and help guide the continued use of our historic resources. They acknowledge contemporary needs, evolution, and encourage desired design changes be done sensitively, I never can say that word right, to protect the overall character of our significant built heritage. So with that in mind, we have one project to review tonight. Harb 2012-09, 213 Orchard Way in Wayne. It's to remove an existing in-ground pool and garage and build a new detached garage, mudroom, and breakfast room. Is there someone here to present that? And could you come up and introduce yourself and use the table for any drawings or anything that you want to talk to us about?
Warren Clater from Warren Clater Architects, and the project is at 213 Orchard Way in Wayne. And the proposed project is to renovate the front of the house, to change the swooping dormer roof line and the clear story windows and have it match the similar style of architecture that's visible on the brick facade of the house. The current materials that are used on the later addition: aluminum siding and stucco, and the garage is located under this portion.
Warren, as you do that, you can kind of see what everybody's seeing.
Okay.
So it's sort of backwards when you move it around, so take your time, but you can center them, that'd be great.
The darker diagonal hashing indicates the new footprint on the proposed, all according to zoning, so there's no variance requested or required here. The existing garage is underneath this part of the house, which creates a split-level condition, and the proposed plan will have all of the living aligned with the existing floor elevations. The detached garage here's a proposed sketch of that detached garage, again using similar materials that are found on the existing house. We'll be using asphalt shingles to match the existing, and instead of the aluminum siding, we'll be proposing to use what has been used next door in a similar garage, which is similar to that of the hardy board or cementatious siding that is durable and recyclable, and which is not a wood product.
second review the new addition, what you're planning on doing?
Sure. As you can see from the site plan, the house is not projecting any farther forward or to the right. All the renovations will take place on the rear of it. Here's the proposed floor plan that has the family room and the added breakfast room and mudroom all on the same level as the kitchen. Due to the sloping grade, there will be some steps that will be determined by the civil engineer once they've given the go-ahead for the project to create the steps down to the new proposed garage level. And then the second floor creates a new master bedroom and or renovated space, and a new master bathroom, and then a walk-in closet or office, depending on how the homeowner chooses to use that space.
Can you go over the exterior elevations?
Sure. The photograph of the existing shows the existing brick on the left, which you can see in the drawing below, and then the renovated space on the right will have similar style windows, step-down roof line, similar shingles, shutters, and then the clapboard style siding.
I was gonna ask-
Basically raising the, excuse me, are you raising the existing addition?
Raising in terms of tearing down or raising in terms of increasing the height?
RAZ.
Yes, we are. We're reusing the footprint of the existing and building on top of that.
I was going to ask you, did you know the date of the original building and the later addition?
I do not know the exact date. The research that we were able to get at the township was somewhat limited.
'Cause I also had the same problem, but 60s, 50s?
It has that look, and it has the look of a 70s addition.
I think in the inventory, it does say something about 60s.
That's what I thought, but it was vague. It was
And
kind
the addition's probably maybe a 70s kind of a thing. But it looks like the garage part was original. The lower part?
It does, yes.
And then they did the other, they changed the roof line to get their clear
Yeah.
story and all that jazz up there.
I would agree, yes.
So in a sense, you're bringing it back a little bit.
Yeah. Well, this particular location is, in the inventory is, it's a non-contributing house as far as the Harb goes. You're bringing this back to a more of a compatible massing than what is there now. And most of the kind of addition work is off the back, which is not visible from the street.
That's correct.
I guess the only thing that is more traditional about this kind of work is that addition that you're proposing would normally lower the roof line into the windows, and the windows would become half dormers. And that would be sort of a more traditional look. It probably is going to impact on your master bedroom too much. If you look at the plan, probably, right?
You
So
know,
that's why you gave the full lift.
I think that this addition is perfectly in keeping with what's there now. And I think it's because it's a 60s house. What you're talking about, I think they did a lot in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, but in the 60s, I think that this kind of look that you're proposing is completely appropriate. You know, I think it's in keeping with the 60s. Or, not that you're trying to bring back the 60s, but I think in terms of the proportion, it's clear. It's clear that it's an addition because you're lowering the roof line a little bit. And it's a pretty traditional way of putting an addition on, where you're keeping the windows in the same proportion, the same height, the same line as the original. So to me, I think it's perfectly in keeping with, from the front of what you're planning to do.
Any questions?
Can you talk a little about the garage, because we never
Sure.
received any elevations for any of that?
Sure. The garage is a detached structure. As you can see here in this area, part of the reason for taking out the existing kidney-shaped swimming pool that's in the rear yard. And the garage will be nestled into the landscape, again, meeting all zoning and building codes and setbacks.
So is it a one-car garage or a two-car garage?
It's a two-car garage. There's the two doors illustrated there.
And the material will be the same hardy board or whatever you use?
That's correct, yep, to match what's on the house.
And is there an apartment or anything above it, or is it just a one-story
The
building?
client's budget would probably dictate any finished space that would be above, whether it's a home studio, office, workout space, of course, all in compliance with the zoning and the township regulations.
I think this goes without saying, but the location to the rear of the lot is traditional for the period of the neighborhood, so that was a nice touch.
Well, I have a question procedurally for us. Are we allowed to talk about the garage? Since we're giving this elevation now, it wasn't submitted. And maybe Ray, you can weigh in on that a little bit as well.
I think we have in the past. I know we did on the one on Chestnut, was it, Walnut, when the garage came in as an add-on. So I think we can address this. It was clearly asked for in the description. It's just that we didn't have a lot of details on that. If your presentation or the outside is good as far as roof lines and things, we'll make sure we get all the building issues correct, when that comes in. So
Okay.
I think it is appropriate to talk about it.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Well, that was my only question, because, we sort of have to make sure public's aware and, all that. But, this is in keeping with this house. It's also giving you a little throwback to some older pieces, too. So I think it kind of captures the neighborhood spirit. And the detached garage is certainly the original deal here in Wayne. So I think from that standpoint, it's acceptable for, and works with everything.
Yeah, and just another comment on the procedural issue. In the past, when we've come back, where we've discussed something where we didn't have the information, then we came back at the next meeting and then presented that to the public. In this case, we actually have something that we're discussing,
Right.
unlike in the past where we were just talking. So this
So
is,
you're comfortable with this, then?
I'm comfortable with that, yeah.
Everybody?
Yeah.
All right.
I think particularly since the building is non-contributing,
Good point.
to me, what's more significant is the placement of the building on the site and the proportion of the building itself in relationship to the house. And, it's hard to say from your drawing, but it looks like the proportions are similar to other outbuildings in the area. And also, it looks like you have an overhanging eave I
Pent
guess.
roof, yes.
Yeah, so it has detail to it, and the garage, are the garage doors, what material will they be?
They would be most likely a simulated wood product because they hold up the best in this region. The sun does beat on that elevation, that's the south-facing elevation, so if it was wood, it would fade and splinter, and the paint would be likely to bubble and pop depending on the color.
Yeah.
So I don't want to speak for the client because that choice hasn't been made from a budget standpoint yet, so, but I would suggest that since this is not a contributing resource, that there's no,
Yeah, I think it has the same, it has the look, the look that is, that the Harb seeks, to have people do. That's not very articulate, but anyway.
The scale of the footprint is appropriate.
Yeah.
It is.
Exactly.
Yeah, the scale and I think the scale, the height, and the footprint,
And the
right.
appearance, and it's
And the
appearance
period.
here, not
And they're
substance.
taking a remodeled addition and making an addition and a garage much more sympathetic to the existing house. So in total, you have something that should have been there maybe in the first place.
Right. I think it's a good project.
Mhm.
Yeah. And your neighbor on the garage side is all siding and,
Yes.
all those things are right there. One of your pictures shows that.
that's correct. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Want to make a motion?
Motion to recommend approval of a COA?
I'd second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. You know the drill after this, right? Well, when's the commissioners' meeting?
Next month.
Okay. All right, we're an advisory board, so our recommendation goes to the commissioners, and then they actually have it on their agenda. They agree or don't agree with us or have comment, and then at that point, if they agree, then it's officially an approved CLO for the Harb. So
Great.
it's not just tonight, it's one more step. And then after that, it's all the building permits and all the stuff you normally have to go through. But thank you for presenting.
Sure. Thank you.
I think it'll be a good project, bring this house back to its 60s.
Yeah.
Which will soon be historic,
Yes,
I
it will,
might
sir.
add.
It will be.
It is already.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any new business? Any old business? I have one comment about old business. Now, I wasn't here last Harb meeting, but there was a woman who got up and was talking about the renovation on Midland, I believe,
Yes.
which there's an architect and a builder on that project that we are both familiar with. And they basically took all the skin off the building. And that's not under our purview to look at unless they're moving windows or doing things structurally. But I think this is the kind of project that is something that needs to be in our realm when they go that far. Now, I don't have a whole lot of doubt that that crew is going to do anything that isn't appropriate because I know them. But there may have been some original material that would have been worth
Yeah.
salvaging, reusing, or whatever, and it looks to me like they removed everything down to the sheathing and saved nothing. They did call me about the columns out front and asked about whether they felt they would have to come back to us to talk about them taking them down, and I said, yes, probably, because
It's new.
that's an element, and they were, they were brick apparently with stucco, and they're kind of meandering a little bit, so they're still up there, but that's probably kind of the last thing that's there. But anyhow, I think that's part of the ordinance that we've all talked about that we need to strengthen up and have a review. And it's, like I say, I think in the end, it's going to be a good project that's going to look like what was there and better. But I think there's a lot of original materials that were probably, overlooked or removed just because it's easier to do so.
Right.
And some of those things, I think, are things that we should be worried about.
I think that's a good point. And most Harb ordinances Most Harb ordinances do consider those things, so maybe it's time for us to rethink.
Yeah. So I think, and we've been talking about this for a while, but we need to sort of do this now, so that's,
Well, I think it's a good valid issue, and I think, I mean, personally, I think with the new lead ordinances, you're going to be seeing a lot of stripping off of siding.
as
Even if
opposed
they're in
to,
these, because of the
You're
lead,
right.
yeah,
because of lead paint. And this is something that, from a restoration standpoint, this law has been, it could be potential for the disaster. And I don't know if any of the preservation community even got involved before the regulations were passed. I just don't know.
yeah, I don't know that
I
process
don't know
either.
either.
That was the EPA, and they
Right, and
generally will hold
Yes.
open hearings, that kind of stuff,
And
right?
they kind of higher level of, what they have to do for safety, health, welfare, so it overrides local stuff, I believe. But you're right,
Yeah,
interesting intersection.
because when you look at what you actually have to do, it's asbestos removal, and the costs go up unbelievably dramatically.
Is Radnor reviewing lead now yet, or,
No, that all comes through feds.
okay. So anyhow, I think, that's kind of number one in my,
Yep,
like, I don't want to be the style police and all that kind of thing, but that's
No.
a pretty severe stripping of a house.
no, I think you're right.
And it should be thoughtfully reviewed, I thought, so.
It's just part of the whole picture anyway, so to not be able to talk about that feels
Mhm.
like we're lacking the whole.
Yeah.
So let's look into what we might need to amend or change wording.
And I'm sure there are other ordinances that have that language that we can probably
I can,
grab and
I
make
can
our own
borrow, I
somehow.
can definitely find a slew of them at work and bring them.
Yeah, that'd be great.
May I bring something to the board's attention? Clearly in our ordinance, you are not to spec materials, just scope of work.
Right.
You cannot tell somebody that they must leave a siding or that they must use a particular material or leave an old piece of wood because it's historic. The presentation is, or if they are putting it back, we would try to make it as close as possible. You have in the past, and really, it only makes common sense, are allowed to put back the AZAC and the other type of hardy board wood. So you can't tell somebody they can't take it down if they are going to put back a newer material that is more, because material is not in your privy for specs. You can't spec a material, only a design, not a material.
I agree that we are looking at appearance, not,
Correct.
but when original material, original pieces of the building, and I know we're not doing alterations, but when original fabric, like an addition, is removed, that's the partial demolition, just definition that's tough for all of us, I think, because it's like the letter of law versus the spirit of law. The spirit, I think, is, yeah, original material, removing it changes the feel. But the letter of law, specific, you can't do that. You're right, you can't, but I think that's one of the hard things we can't.
Yeah, but you can't tell somebody, I mean, if they want to put back, now, in all fairness, the whole board saw the proposed pictures in the drawings. No one commented about using the old material to make the new. You said that it was approved because it looks good, it looked
And
original.
That's
So,
true.
so that, with that being said, I don't know that you should be real surprised that as you go to strip these things off with lead and termites and all the other things, does the builder leave a small portion, a 10 by 10 area, and then reside the whole house in new material? Who determines that? You can't determine it here as a board. It obviously is a field issue, and it's also up to the homeowner because they're the one that have to maintain that. If they have hardy board, they'll never have to paint on one side, and you're making them use 25 or 50 or 100 square feet of old that's going to be a constant problem and already has 25 or 50 years of wear to it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. That's why the scope of the job and the overall look of things is pretty much what you're is what the privy is and not the specs for the material. We can't get old growth pine, and we can't get a lot of cedar. I mean, that's why people are going with the AZAC and the
Right.
garage doors that are the simulated wood, because the metal holds up, it's insulation. That goes more on the lines of our energy code, as opposed to putting the old-fashioned wood garage doors up that you can't seal, the panels crack, and it's just a maintenance nightmare. That's why sometimes I understand if you're taking down a 100-year-old log cabin,
Right,
and you
right.
want to try to save that and put it up somewhere else, that's a different purview than trying to do an addition or marry a house or whatever. I know it's kind of drastic, but in the same token, if you look at that picture of what they proposed this thing look like, I mean, the board was quite happy with that. It's just that they're using the newer materials. This lady was upset because they tore out everything that she loved, but she
No,
doesn't
it's-
live there anymore.
It was a comment on an incomplete project, and I realized that, she doesn't see the end result.
Right.
Right. And
But,
she's,
we're sort of a resource, we're trying to be a resource to the community, and I think it's worth a discussion with an owner and possibly the builder or the architect about, what sort of means, could be leading you to the same end. And, I don't want to tell people what to do, but I'd like to say, well, I'd like to have a discussion on what really needs to go and really what has to go. And, as long as the end result is we have the scale and the proportions and all of
But
the shadow lines.
that's not your privy to
Not now, it's
design
not, I know.
to do their project and tell them what the materials are they have to save and reuse.
I know, right now it's not, but I think
Right.
we need to have ability to just discuss it with them, and we didn't really do that.
Did you ask Warren how much he's going to try to save off the old to use on the new garage? See, this is where the
It's
fuzzy
different.
part
No,
runs in.
that's not first of all, that's not
Yeah,
a contributing
exactly.
building. And so it's not technically considered historic by this board.
kind of like the original building, there was a carriage house in North Wayne, Walnut maybe, where they were redoing the entire thing, but they were like, I forget, keeping some of the overall structure or something. They were keeping something, it was really nice to hear. They were keeping the cupola, I think, and then something, the boards they were keeping, and it was like, good, that's a nice thing to just tell someone, great, that keeps the character longer, or that bigger. I think it's nice to appreciate when someone does a good thing like that and still rehab it, still change it for their new use, but they're keeping the character intact as much as possible. It wasn't all of it by any means, or they were reconstructing. So I think it's like kind of what Kim was saying, we're here as a resource, so yeah, that's a great way to continue a character of a neighborhood. So yeah, good job that you're keeping what you can keep. So I think it's a fine line between saying, no, you can't, because we're not the kind of Harb that says, must put slate back where slate was, must, but when it's a good thing that someone's doing, or giving someone a suggestion of, you might not have to remove the door if you can refinish it. I'm just kind of using an example.
Well, we keep running into the problem when the homeowner or the builder or the architect stands there and the board says, we would like you to, or you need to consider doing that. They're under the assumption that they don't get approved unless they say yes.
I hear what you're saying.
And that's, we've been through that 100 times, so we have to be careful
We do.
how you suggest things.
And make it clear.
And, maybe on some projects you could use some other, I know if I was spending this kind of money for a big project and I was doing it, there'd be no way I'd want to put a 50-year-old white pine trim board back on there or use a 50-year-old door when I know that, I can get something close, but in a material that just the maintenance upkeep, and then I don't have to worry about getting somebody to strip that lead paint off of there so I can reuse that. Because that's a cost now. You're going to send siding or doors or whatever out. I know this old house does it, but not everybody here can afford to send, what Tommy Silva's doors out of here. So seriously,
I
hear
it's a
you.
big problem.
Yeah. And also in process, like, that house may have been, I'm just using that as an example, but,
Right.
they may have opened up something and it was termite infested, and it was,
Did you get a look at all the foundation boards and all those beams they had to replace in there?
there were
at
none.
Wheaton?
It was dust. So,
Yeah.
you can't stop a project and say, oh, you've got to go back to the Harb and talk to them about this. I realize that.
No.
But all I'm saying is that I'd like to sort of somehow give them
But-
a little more info on
Yeah,
it.
I think Cam does a pretty job at saying, this is a suggestion, but maybe we need to come up with a better way, a more consistent way to say, here's some thoughts, or here's some ideas that you have it's not going to change the vote, or something like that. Somehow, I know what you're saying, and I wish there was a way to still get that information out without letting people think, oh, we know what we have to say.
Well, I think that's up to us. We just need to be clear.
We do have to be clear.
And, we should be assuming that these things are going to come up and be proactive in talking about that. And it's not that we're going to say, well, and if this happens, then you have to do this. It's if this happens, it would be our recommendation that you would try to do something.
Right.
And give them a direction, that's all.
But understand, sitting here as the township representative, I also have to chime in from time to time and say, you're above where you need to be.
Right.
You cannot do that. So it's tough for me to sit here and try to advise too. I mean, I understand you're trying to give them some advice or what you maybe would like to see them do, but clearly by ordinance and clearly by your recommendations, you're not allowed to touch that. So
Well, if
by
we preface
recommending
by-
it, you're already stepping on the ordinance that you're trying to guard and make happen. So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. You gotta be careful until there's some real clear ordinance changes and things. I mean, it'd be
Well,
nice
that's what we're
to,
talking about. We're trying to do something with the ordinance to do that. But
I understand.
if we preface our comments with something that it is a suggestion and we're not mandating anything, I think we can kind of go wherever we want with a suggestion. But make sure they understand that that's all it is. It has nothing to do with our approval process.
What if it's after we actually vote?
Well, we could do that as well.
as a recommendation, that may be a way to clear things up, because then clearly the public would see that you're asking them to save something if there is a possibility.
Right.
Clearly, we know we can't ask you to do that, but if there would be something that, old and new, that you could marry together, it would certainly go a long way.
And then everyone knows the vote was done.
Everybody, the vote was done, and
All right,
and
that's
it's your
clean. That's
recommendation.
much cleaner. Okay. Well, then we can start that way then.
All right.
I like that. All right, anybody else want to say anything? Okay. I move to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
4-0, we're out.